Every single Zenith monster we've encountered so far in our journey have been upgraded versions of typical monsters like deviants or rare species. It's a pretty consistent design choice, and it's these consistencies that make it so much easier when the player base want to have a conversation about the ridiculous lore, or even when an ecology discussion breaks out. Capcom will decide, however, once in a blue moon not to care. All convention is thrown out and monsters with subspecies get variants, or something like Mizutsune skips straight from subspecies to rare. And that just makes everything so wonderful to classify. Happy to report, in this case they've done it again for the Zenith monster we're facing down today. Bogabadorumu, a name that's far too long and contains an R I can't roll, so for the purposes of enunciation I think Bog or Boggers will suffice. There's no base species that this creature pulls its influence from, and it appears to exist as a Zenith as is. Indeed, the fluff text we got from Capcom Online Games mentioned that it was discovered in the White Lake and displayed an enhanced power in its limbs indicative of the Zenith monster. Fun fact about this as well, Basura, a brute wyvern that also calls the White Lake home, had hints in its description that mentioned it's believed to be hiding from something under the sands of the lake. Looks like we found our culprit. The point here is that there was really no frame of reference in general when the monster was first announced, and it also throws a few questions out there as to how it became a Zenith just by itself without having an existing species to pull from. Who knows? Design-wise, Boggers is a hulking mass of crocodilian power. The body is covered in shining blue cracks and inlays, almost like veins, and a bright sphere on its head almost looks like somebody shoved a gem in there. Bright orange fins jut from the back like clipped wings, and the tail itself is a diamond-shaped mace of a thing. It's squat and intimidating in its form when it faces you, and you know it's going to have the firepower to boot. Gameplay-wise, Bog is classified as a flying wyvern, with the tiny detail of not having wings to do said flying with. That sounds familiar? That's because it is. You're going to be seeing a lot of a Cantor and Ucanlos in how you approach the fight in terms of the sheer size, wide-reaching physical attacks, and, yes, even the speed. See, Boggers is slow, ridiculously so for a Zenith where it prefers to stay in one place and use an impressive attack range to take you out rather than chasing you down. It lets its powers do the work rather than do all that unnecessary cardio of its short brothers. It's so laid back, I reckon if they could have coded it to sit on a couch it would fight you from there, and would probably be just as effective. Of course, when we talk about the abilities, it's here where we focus on its use of the Zenith body part. Countless blue tubes cover Bog's body and will glow intermittently throughout the fight. The largest collection of these tubes are on the massive oar-like forearms jutting out like spines or needles. Their main function here is to expel a blue gas over a large area which detonates on a hit. Gameplay-wise, this means that not only will the giant arm slams be accompanied by a massive Zenith level tremor, but an explosion AoE will be tacked onto every single one. Not just that, but a few of these attacks will also leave lingering clouds that explode a short while after the initial hit. Essentially, this serves to ramp up the danger, covering the weakness of Bog's lack of speed by forcing positioning with a border of explosions, as well as expanding the overall impact of the various attacks. It's here where we focus on exactly which attacks, though, are going to be the most important to familiarise yourself with, and naturally, any tricks that this hulking behemoth will pull out. First thing to pay attention to is the body language during the standard arm slams. There's either the basic attack with a slam and an explosion that can be rolled or guarded, or the alternative is where the body will shift inwards before the slam hits. If this happens, Boggers will shoot backwards with the recoil of the explosion and start trucking back towards the place it left. It's important not to get too greedy with chasing it down. Let the monster come to you here, as the charge carries a full hitbox you can't really respond to until it ends the move with a bite. Secondly, while Boggers can't fly, he sure as hell can dig. If the arms go up and it begins to tunnel, there's a quick counter you have to be ready for. After heading underground to your location, Boggers will burst out and attempt to scatter a bunch of gas for quick ignition. You'll have a short period of time when it comes out to recover from some knockback in which you can roll, so your best option is to counter it. Any damage inflicted to Bog before it can fully resurface will cause it to get stuck, letting you get a few swings in while he's trapped, so this is a vital opening to have. And it turns out this isn't all. There is a fun list of things packed into this croc to cover, and it's here where we take a look at the actual functionality of the Zenith arms. You see, weapons fashioned from Zenith monsters also have an additional built-in part break buff, signified by blue flashes when striking any Zenith body part. This is a very good mechanic to take advantage of, as typically these body parts have thresholds that are a massive percentage of the overall health, meaning it's incredibly easy to miss a few times and slay the monster before the part itself breaks if you don't bring these special weapons. The buff to part break is 50%, so it's really something you shouldn't be ignoring. This is further compounded with Bogabadorumu. See, the arms don't technically become Zenith parts until you reach the second phase, meaning at the start all you're going to see is normal effects rather than blue flashes. And overall that means that once that does change, you've got something like half the health pool to work with and an even smaller margin for error if you want those material drops. You either have to be incredibly precise with your aim, or really the best option is to bring something like a Zenith Anoru weapon to get it done. This guy gets so mad at you, it will literally take the kid gloves off and start fighting you with real hands halfway through the fight. There's something to be said for that. There is an attack itself that does signify this phase change. It's really well telegraphed with a mass scattering of smoke. All you've got to pay attention to here is the face and right arm. The face moving forward will indicate when you have to roll to dodge the roar, and then after that the right arm has the slightest movement as the ignition for the gas. Once the next phase is activated, this attack will get added to the pool of possible moves that boggers can do, so you'll have to be ready for it to appear again multiple times in a hunt. Nonetheless, if you break through all of that and bust both arms, you completely kneecap the beast. No more gas emission from the arms, which removes the related explosions, and a total removal of Zenith Tremor. Boggers' range just get completely shattered, and the threat level plummets through the floor. Now, some attacks of course will cause explosions, yes still, but it's so much less frequent now, and you're really under no sort of danger at all unless you decide to stand right under a fist. This is the kind of part break effect I love, a huge reward for committing to the mechanics of the monster and a victory of its own before you get to the quest clear theme. The smoke being removed as well is a huge boon by itself. Visibility becomes a massive issue with this obscuring the view, not least in this attack here where he pulls back and slams a couple of times before roaring. Having a clear view of each blow is really going to help your timing here, and it can get so disorientating before that break. On top of this, if there wasn't enough to go through already, we come to the extra benefit that the fight gives you for additional part breaks. With Bog, not only will you have to contend with Zenith Tremor, the roar is also elevated to Zenith levels, presenting another danger to avoid, and it doesn't stop there. During certain animations, the roar will also inflict a heightened level of stun on hunters, which will incapacitate you much in the same way as Zenith Roar will. It basically serves as a way to circumvent any earplugs negation you may have. Some Zeniths are pretty clever like that. If you break the face, the Zenith level roar will be completely nullified, so for the first part of the fight I'd say it's beneficial to aim for that before the phase change, even if you don't get a Zenith material for it. You can focus on the arms afterwards if you bring those special part break weapons. All of that information, and we're only at the base level for the monster. Good stuff. Let's start moving up the quests. At G rank 400, we're thrown into the beast's home turf in the White Lake, where the only moveset addition is this tantrum that Bog will throw occasionally. There's 4 hits in all, with explosions thrown in for good measure, all while shifting around for a real haphazard impact. Again, the speed of the monster really affects the attack here. The hits are all telegraphed very well, just make sure that you're responding as best you can to the final hit, as the explosion and tremor will cover a much larger range than the previous attacks. Even alternating each limb, you'll have enough time to see the right arm, the left arm, the tail raise up to be able to respond to it anyways. There's also a wonderful dust effect in the area whilst you're fighting in the White Lake, meaning the aforementioned lack of visibility is further aggravated here. I can't see shit. At G rank 600, we're moving on to a big load of nothing aside from a return to the painted waterfalls. So let's talk about a cool skill that Bog has introduced. The skill is commonly translated as Furious nowadays, which is nice and simple, but I'm a sucker for the translation that was floating around at the time of release, which was more literal. Said translation was Lion Speed. Sounds way more badass. Essentially, it's a long-term reward for playing well. The more you guard or evade, then attack in response without taking severe knockback, the further through the 3 levels you'll rise. With each level, your raw, affinity, element and status attributes increase in kind. When you get to the final level, a massive burst of gold surrounds your hunter and you receive 180 attack, 20% extra element and status, and 40% more affinity. An utterly putrid increase. I love this activation. It's basically the best visual cue to tell you you're doing great in the series, and every single time it pops it's a huge boost in confidence. Having such visceral feedback to good gameplay is an amazing reward for the player both visually and audibly. And combined with the huge boosts that the skill offered, it's basically an utterly essential skill. This is more than enough to offset the terrible treatment that Blast attribute got in Frontier and the lackluster weapons that resulted for Boggers here, but we'll forgive that. Finally, if we go on to the last level back in the White Lake at G rank 800, we have one new attack to deal with here. You may miss the tell as it'll involve the tail being slammed into the ground and submerged, and your view may be blocked by the rest of the building-sized body. Regardless, what will happen next is a series of pits will open up in the area, 2 of which will track and appear under you before exploding. Constant movement or hiding behind a shield completely disables this attack, and if you're clever enough you can keep a string of attacking and dodging together to not lose your rhythm at all. It's another simple attack to handle unless you end up rolling into one by mistake. All you have to do is just pay a bit of attention to your surroundings and this becomes a non-issue. Bogabadorumu was a unique and interesting monster with so many little hidden mechanics and rewards for players to find throughout the fight. It's really hard not to like it, especially with that unique crocodile design. The thing is, for all the craziness and speed we've seen from the other Zeniths, one can't help but feel a little underwhelmed by this slow explosion we're tasked to fight. If it were the first ever Zenith introduced, it would feel way more appropriate as an introduction to the fights and various different mechanics and rewards, plus would serve as a way of easing the difficulty up, which of course would be a nice thing to do if Frontier cared about the well-being of the hunters. It would also encourage exploration and experimentation. If you could break Bog's face to reduce the roar, what other monsters could these breaks work on? Overall, Bogabadorumu is an impressive and technically fascinating monster. I do like it, but it doesn't put the fear of God into me. I just can't help but feel that it would be a real Zenith level threat if you made it that much faster, the explosions more deadly, and turned it into a real battle of attrition. Give Boga some love and turn this Zenith into a proper stressful fight. Maybe we'll see something like that one day. For now, however, this is the end of the Mountains report. The next report we'll be focusing on will be the Drylands report. This is going to be covering the desert and the White Lake and all these various arid areas of the Mesoportan region. I hope you've enjoyed the series so far, and you look forward to the next monsters that will show up in these desert regions. That's all for now. Cera out.